Thank you. Hi, everyone. Can everyone hear me in the back? No, not really? If I talk like that? That's better? Okay, good. Because we have two microphones here, so I just want to make sure that I don't have to wear two. Thank you, and thanks for showing up for this session. One never knows at a more tech conference what the interest will be in things that are perceived to be communications, but it's great to see such a great turnout. J'aimerais ajouter que la présentation serait en anglais, mais si vous avez des questions en français, n'hésitez pas, parce que nous sommes bilingues. Alors, so social media, are you set up for success? So it's also a story of how the University of Ottawa went from this to this. This is our beautiful social media directory page, which is new. So basically, I joined the university in late 2010, and I found if I could describe the University of Ottawa in one word or one picture, I would use bunnies. I know typically we use cats in IT, but bunnies because there was a proliferation of social media channels. And I think because it was so easy to make a social media channel, anyone could do it. All it took was somebody in a faculty, just, an eager person saying, hey, we need a Twitter channel. And they just create it, and then they wouldn't know what to fill it with. So basically, when I arrived, we had 17 plus. I mean, there were the other ones that were unaccounted for. It was like a discovery. It was like an Easter egg hunt that never ended, right? So you kept stumbling upon these various groups, several Twitter accounts, none that were feeding to each other, very few linkages between channels, not consistently bilingual, or one would be French only, one would be English only, and really no strategy driving them all. So kind of what websites were like, actually, before we had strategists. So in terms of doing a SWOT analysis, this is what I presented, that we had social media presence. A few channels had traction. Our weaknesses were that we had no policies, guidelines, strategy, nor governance to really handle all of our social media channels. We were using social media push, like not engaging, which is a big no-no. So we were using social media as traditional communications, not Web 2.0 communications, which is a dialogue. We also had no dedicated resources. Our opportunities were, once we had a strategy in place, this could strengthen our reputation and our communications. Our key audiences are on social media, so we just need to go there to reach them. Our threats were falling behind other universities due to a lack of strategy, but to be quite honest, in the Canadian high ed web world, the bar wasn't that high. Here's a snapshot of Canadian universities on Facebook, and I think the big thing in 2010 was if you had a Facebook channel. Not everybody did, but most did. And the likes were between, maybe 3,000 to 10,000, And you think, oh, that's not bad. And then you'd compare it to what Harvard had at the time, which kind of just blows it out of the water, right? The other one, Oregon State, blows it out of the water. So it just showed that our American counterparts were using social media far more effectively 3 years ago, and perhaps arguably continue to do so. This is a quote that I find very inspirational. It came from an article that was written by J.D. Rucker, and it appeared in Sociable about a year and a half ago, but I think it still rings true. And what's interesting is he talks about that it's amazing that more universities have not latched onto social media and not used it in the way in which social media is intended, So not as a one-way push, but as a real dialogue, as collaboration, as building community. And he kind of launched a challenge for us to raise up to that bar, and I gather inspiration from it, and I throw it out as a challenge for all of us. Here's an example of this community, and it's a little bit of how we use social media at the University of Ottawa, and Adrian will talk to this a little bit more, but it's all about reaching out and kind of grabbing the conversations that are happening and leveraging them. So in the world of Twitter, it's almost retweets and replies are more important than publishing. So engagement is more important than the top-down push. And here's an example. In terms of how you can have dialogue with people online. I know also when people say that they're accepted to the university, we reach out to them. So it's reaching out to the community to kind of make that moment, to solve a problem, to do all these various things. Here's other examples in terms of, where do we buy tickets for this? Now we have 2 of our accounts that are following you and actually following students. We actually use our official accounts to follow the university community. This is really about, what you need for success. My first steps when I came in 2010 was to go with an immediate action plan. And basically what you need to succeed, I think you need all these 4 things. You need a strong policy on which you base a strategy. You need your guidelines, but you need your community. And in social media, if you don't have community, you don't have anything, really. Some actions that we took, we formed a committee. No, we formed a working group. A working group, actually, it was a productive working group. It wasn't just a group of people sharing expertise. It was actually all the people who were in charge of the various social media accounts. We brought them together. We shared best practices. We created how-tos because our community needed immediate need. We also needed an immediate need in terms of a bilingualism policy because most of our bilingualism regulations were written for the print era. So in terms of if you do French first in Twitter, that means that your tweet's going to be on the bottom. But also it's not a publication model, it's really a conversation model. So it's different. We hired a dedicated resource, Adrian Ebsary. We led an innovative student social media project, and we figured out who owns what. This is our governance model for all of the web. For all of the, I want to say all the non-academic web, but it was adopted in July. It's a very precise model of who is accountable, who is responsible. That's what the A is, accountable. R is responsible, executes the work. C, these people need to be consulted. And I, these people only need to be informed. So without a precise model of who owns what, it's really difficult to move forward. So other things that we've taken, we've done a social media policy, which has been approved by our web steering committee. We started to do more common branding for social media. We have integrated social media widgets into the website, and Adrian can speak to a bit of that. And we have best practices for all social media channels. For a social media policy, the big question is to define what's official, what's unofficial. And I think even though we defined like 3 different groups, you could almost go into 4 and you could kind of parse them down. So we had the official channel. So as you see there, the official, this is our main Twitter channel. this is the Twitter account for our president or rector, Alan Rock, and this is a faculty one. Ones that we consider to be non-official but in our community, the personal account of our chancellor and also of profs. Technically, I could kind of be part of there if I'm an employee and I choose to be a spokesperson. Our media relations people could be there. And then we also have just personal. Like if I have a Facebook account and I just use it to post pictures of my kids to show to the grandparents, then, you know, hands off. I'm not mentioning the university, it doesn't count. So some of the things that you've noticed is a big difference, or what defines a really official one, is it has a logo, it had a little swoosh, it has a visual identifier, so you know, oh, this is an official account. It also appears on our social media directory page. It has to be bilingual. For other ones that are personal, non-official, mostly professors' accounts, and their accounts are in the langue de leur choix, right? And we can RT them and we can feature them in different ways, but it's almost like saying they have a non-official account, they have their academic freedom, they can say whatever they want, but we can also leverage it and add it to our stream, because actually what they're going to say is often far more interesting than what central or administration is going to say. So that's the way we've kind of cut the pie. So in terms of our social media policy, what it covers, here are some things what it covers. In essence, what we wanted to do is a lot of things are centralized. You cannot create an official account unless it comes through communications, just to make sure you have enough information to go to sustain a channel. You have a strategy. You're using the branding. You have people to monitor, those sorts of things. We also want to make sure we're not diluting the brand, and we're not making people go off to 20 different Twitter channels or 15 different Facebook when they want one thing. It makes sense if they're very tied to a particular topic or speciality, and they decide to follow a channel like that. But if they want to know, most students and audiences want to know, what's the de facto channel? And I only want to do one. And we started off with 2 main Twitter ones, and then we actually combined it to one bilingual one. And also, we want to be very clear in terms of advertising on social network sites. And in terms of this is really, we treat the internet as an extension of the workplace in real life. So rather than creating a whole bunch of different policies to say, this is how you should act on social media and la, 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 since there are so many other code of conduct policies and academic code of conduct in place, we simply say, refer to those. Whatever is in those policies and documents just applies to the web. The web is just an extension. Guidelines and best practices. This is where I'm going to pass it off to Adrian, because he developed most of these. So
hopefully that works. So the best practices, unlike the policy, were more for focusing our operators on how they should use individual features and the mechanics of social networking sites. So these included instructions for how to use the common features within those sites, defining them, and identify what their use implies. Also, of course, the important issue of communicate bilingually, because each network has its own considerations, and accessibility applications that you can advertise to users who might have special considerations. And then contact information. But of course, the most important feature here is just defining how do you use certain parts of a social network. So you may know that Lots of companies will follow people as a passive marketing tactic. It's a soft way of letting people know that you exist, increases your follows over time, but of course you can start following thousands of people, which may make your timeline useless. So defining how you use the follow as a marketing tool, I think is very important for your marketers so that they understand what is favoriting a tweet imply. Does that really imply that you're liking it in a positive sense? Is it an endorsement? The way that we see a favorite, for instance, is it's a form of read receipt to acknowledge that we've read a message. It has no emotional connotations. And defining that is useful for your operators and I think also for your community. And then, of course, when you look at other things like Facebook, how do you use sharing of posts from other pages? How do you moderate / allow posts on your wall? I'm always surprised. I think most university walls, they're either closed or open. But I'm not sure whether administrators know that there's a middle ground where you have the default of hidden. Everything's hidden from your wall, but then you can up moderate content as you see fit after it's submitted to you. So that's a hugely valuable way of moderating a wall to allow a community to be heard while filtering out a lot of the spam, because most of what we get on our wall is marketing to students. And while some of that's relevant, you want to make sure that the conversations are what are being heard and that you're doing customer service, because that's what people who come to the wall really want to see, especially with our international students. Groups for schools, if you don't know that this exists, it already does, and your students are definitely using it. You have to have an official institutional email address. Just go Facebook group for schools, and once you have that institutional email address, it allows you to go in and create groups and organize with your peers. Within a month of creating this, it had more people joining this meta group, a group organizer, than our entire page had fans. So this was 10,000 people in less than a month. You've certainly got one for your school. If you don't know about it, you should be monitoring it. And again, if people are using groups, how do you use that as an operator? Because you cannot operate as the group. You have to use your personal account. So how do your operators function at that point? If you're in the social media business and you have a Facebook page or a personal account that you still consider personal, you may want to consider revising the way that you use your privacy settings or looking at it as a professional tool, because I think really it's so important in our field to be transparent. Also, workshops we found were hugely valuable. Presentations were useful for teaching our staff, but really it's the hands-on experience that they need with the social media, which is where we saw the most value. And to reinforce the best practices, at the moment, we're creating screenshot walkthroughs of the social media networks, whether it's on mobile or the network itself, to help the community figure out how they can use it on their own time. Now, measures of success, I think once you start heading into social media, this is hugely important wherever you're going to go. And as a former biochemist, data is really my interest. So one of the, I think, underappreciated metrics that's out there is the volume of replies. Superior customer service metric. You may see on Twitter sometimes people will sign their initials at the end of a tweet. Some people think this is for personalization. It is. It allows you to identify who's tweeting, but more so than that, that is your metric for outreach. The number of times I've signed my initials is the number of customer service tweets I've sent. You can see right here in this tiny number, 3,612, and that's over the last year. So using those kinds of metrics can be hugely valuable to figure out what your efficiency is. And then if you've got a little bit of Excel expertise, you can start graphing that over time to see when your big peaks of activity are. TwitSprout is a really great Canadian program. You want to be measuring your community growth. Absolutely. On Facebook, that's easy. They've got the insights that show you likes over time, daily likes. On Twitter, you can look at followers, following, the number of tweets you've sent using this TwitSprout program, which allows you to have a certain number of accounts. But you can see here, you've got a dip in the blue bar there, the following. We unfollow users every summer around June who are not reciprocally following us back. And what that does is people who aren't paying attention, we no longer follow them, so it doesn't increase the number of community links that could be potentially sent in their direction. It may be creepy if you're following someone who's not following you back, and that may be a message, a way that the community is sending us a message, hey, I don't really want you paying attention to me anymore, or maybe they've moved on. But it also revalues our follows. So a lot of people see a discrepancy or a large ratio in the number of you follow to the number that follow you as a sign of influence. So if you decrease your relative number of followers to following over time, people may see you as more influential. And you can see there, when we unfollowed all those people, there was absolutely no impact in the number of followers. And in fact, you'll notice a tiny bump at the start with the red line, which could suggest some people were following us as they noticed that we were performing an unfollow activity. Follower wonk, figuring out what your audience is. There's some great tools for that. Follower wonk will let you pick out where they're from, what languages they speak, how many followers they have, huge amounts of data. I think negative feedback is underappreciated. You can look at the days that you've had the most likes, but they also tell you when you have people unliking and unsubscribing from your page. Pick out those days, figure out what content you shared, never do that content again, or change it. And then influence scoring, there's lots of talking about this. There's the closed versus the open. We preferred the open metrics generally. CRED is considered more open. What CRED does is it measures the number of activities. You can't really see it there, unfortunately, but that's a scoring guide. So the number of times someone retweets you or mentions you has a certain point value, and then they measure your influence and your outreach based on that. So they have two separate scores. You may have heard of Clout and Peer Index. You have no idea how they're scoring you. So they give you an arbitrary number, and they even allow you to attach multiple accounts. So there's no way to know if it's a benchmarking metric. I mean, your competitors could have 5 accounts attached, you could have 2. It's not a scientific or an objective way to measure yourself against your peers. If you've got a big number, you can certainly take it to your management and say, hey, we're obviously getting a lot of retransmission of our messages, but beyond that, it's really not an effective way of comparison. CRED is more valuable, but they've just been sued by Twitter for their access, so they're going to be shutting down soon, unfortunately. I guess transparency is not winning the war in the influence world. So benchmarking is another thing. How do you effectively benchmark? And I think Facebook is one of the few places where you can do this really easily. I just took this data based on the last 25 wall posts on these major Canadian universities, McGill, uOttawa, UBC. And you'll look here and you'll see uOttawa ranks relatively low in most of these categories relative to the others. But when you normalize that by the number of people this was targeted to, we target our posts. And if you don't know how to use targeting, you got to enable that immediately on your page. Go into settings and it'll say privacy gating, privacy post gating. Enable that and then you'll be able to target your posts based on language, age, gender, location of the users who you're targeting to. So I divided this by, since they do not target their entire fan base, then I divided it on our side by the relative targeted population, and you'll notice that we perform much more effectively than them. So looking at your competitors and trying to look at if they're not targeting, looking at their overall population and how they're performing as a result of those posts is very important. How are you doing on average? Because not many people like this, but if you don't know the EdgeRank metric and you're doing Facebook marketing, you've really got to become familiar with this. The affinity score, so then the probability someone will see you in their newsfeed is directly related to the number of previous interactions that user has had with your page. So every time you post content that I don't interact with, that I see, the probability of me seeing you again is decreased. So every piece of boring content slashes your marketing budget. You're destroying your own marketing budget going forward. So if you have someone who says, we need this on our Facebook page, and it's not going to get you likes, you have to step back and say, no, that's not going on the Facebook page because you're doing damage to my community. So again, what I'm trying to emphasize here is virality. The score of engaged users over the total number of users that you saw that post is the most important metric you will have, because that will tell you how many people are going to see your content going forward into the future. And then you can also start looking at tools like this, which Gephi doesn't require. There's a great program out there, requires some Java knowledge, but this is netlytic.org. With a simple Excel sheet, you can upload this and start looking at your community structure based on how they're tweeting. So this is from a conference I went to, but you can take a simple Excel file of tweets, and this will interrelate people based on their tweets. So you can look at major influencers based on this, and that's particularly useful. Sentiment analysis, you may have heard of it, don't use it, it's useless. The technology's young, it's not worth the investment, and doing it manually is much more valuable if you're thinking about it. Also, if you're interested in any other languages, it's English is the only kind of sentiment technology that's significantly advanced, and even then it's very weak. So I'll hand this back to Nichole for the conclusion.
It's hard to tweet and present. So just giving an overview of where we're at today. And so we can leave some questions, because I think you may have some questions after Adrian gave that barrage of tools that we have. In terms of social media accomplishments, we have kind of now ensured that our channels are bilingual and branded. We have very precise articulated strategies for major social networks, Twitter, Facebook, Google, Foursquare, Pinterest. I think also what's missing there is YouTube and Instagram. Less is more. We created 2 Twitter accounts for the entire uOttawa community, although one is kind of the official push, and the one that we love and hold dear and has the most followers and most engagement is uOttawa Direct. We've created 101 workshops for staff and for professors, and actually made it part of the curriculum at the university. I know I have presented to professors through our Center for Academic Leadership, and Adrian is presenting through our internal learning lessons, c'est cadeau, c'est learning opportunities for employees as well. So we baked it in, let's say. We've done some experimentation with social media. One of the ideas that Adrian had was, what if we had social media ambassadors and we didn't edit anything they said? Anything that they put forward wasn't edited by communications. So we did that. And surprisingly, none of the students wrote anything bad. If anything, what we didn't want to do is we didn't want to dilute their unique voice, the voice of a student, something that I can't reproduce, no one can reproduce except for a student. And again, social media, authenticity wins. And you can sense when something is on social media and it's not authentic. It's almost like, nope, move on. We were positioned ourselves as leaders in social media outreach. This was our CRED outreach score. And unfortunately, CRED is now changing again because it got sued by Twitter. But we were really proud of this, is that we were tied #1 in outreach with 12 other universities, and this is kind of worldwide. This is great. This is resource to manage the conversation. This is what I show to executives to kind of show, this is why we need resources. This is before we hired Adrian and before we hired students. This is the point when we did hire them. These are our mentions on Twitter. These are the conversations that are being followed. And you can see, and it's really interesting to see what people are talking about. Like here, orientation, different things, the Aga Khan, that's when we gave him an honorary doc. Here they were talking about the UPass. I think some of our Carleton colleagues would appreciate that. So the UPass is a transit pass here. Here, Olivia Chow, she was named as an honorary doc. Interesting as well. So it's really interesting. And this is when Michel Jean was announced as the chancellor. So it's really interesting as a communicator to find out what people are talking about, but it's also interesting if you're in customer service to find out what are the irritants as well. And also in IT, when a tool goes down, boy, do you hear it on Twitter. And we send it to our IT department. So basically what we've learned is too many channels is actually a bad thing. It dilutes the brand. And it also makes it really inefficient to monitor for social media. Use social media for recruitment. This is what we learned in our student social media ambassadors program, was that current students don't really want to hear from other students. They want to hear from administration, actually, and they want their problems solved. Future students love social media, and they want to hear from current students. Use your social media as a customer service tool. For us, we decided 1 channel, 2 languages, because we didn't want to, we wanted a bilingual conversation, not a siloed conversation. And I know Adrian's going to be speaking to this more in his presentation in the next hour. Social media is invaluable for crisis communications, and measure everything. Use data to drive strategy and your content. So I think we have lots of time, and that's great, because I'm usually with social media, people have lots of questions. Okay, how is your communications team organized? Where do you sit in the organization? So I'm director for web communications. So web communications itself is, I'm report to an executive director for communications directorate, and that's under external relations. So I think at other universities you call it strategic communications or whatnot. So in our governance chart, it's basically my team that drives the strategy for everything to do with the public web. Public web, kind of non-academic, but that's it, pretty much. So my team specifically, I have, I have about 7 in my team, and then Adrian. Adrian is our lead on social media, but we also hire students, and he also reaches out to the other operators as well. I don't know, Adrian, if you wanted to speak a bit about more of that. The other thing I wanted to say is we also use Hootsuite as a way to do social media monitoring. And also we use that to, if there's anything that comes up, like if a student has a question or a crisis, we're able to assign that right away to other operators or other people who actually have the answer.
Yeah, well, Hootsuite's a hugely valuable community management tool. Again, if you're thinking about looking at the enterprise model, if you don't have 10K to blow on it, don't even call them. It's not worth it. And the biggest value I've found is leveraging the faculty and the service communications officers and working with them. If you can do that and build that network in your community, I think that was the most important part of being able to move forward, especially in this customer service stuff, because if you don't have cooperation from those units, it will make your job much more difficult.
Yes?
In terms of security, how many people have direct access to the accounts, and do you enforce a password policy, change passwords every day?
We change the passwords monthly. I'm the only one who generally has access. We use Hootsuite to distribute it more evenly across some of the users, but depends. The @uOttawa account, for instance, the whole media relations team does. So yeah, security is definitely a risk, and I am hoping Twitter comes up with their two-step authentication soon, which people have been talking about. But if not, it is one of the biggest social media risks. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, but it's pretty much everybody in the communications directorate itself.
Did you find that an executive level people were concerned about the fact that these conversations are happening in the public domain? And was that a challenge when you were trying to sell your strategy to people?
Yeah, that's a good question. I came from, before I came to the university, I was actually part of the federal government. So I was very used to educating up and educating, making the case for social media. So when I arrived, actually, there was a real appetite for social media, and there our VP had created an advisory group on social media to start the conversation. So the conversation had already been started. But I would say that we've done a lot to educate. We've done a lot of presentations, both to the CA, our administration committee, also to directors and such. Adrian has done presentations where it's just all data. And actually you would think that when you, and some of the data is beautiful and some of it is pretty ugly, right? And we have shown those slides and not really censored them. And you would be surprised at the reaction. The reaction is actually, we have to do something. We have to fix this problem. So actually it's been a very effective tool for us in kind of saying, this is what the students are saying on Twitter. These are what people are saying. And maybe we need to fix A, B, and C. So it's actually been a motivating factor. But I have to say it's all about showing measurements of success, showing the conversations, and that really goes a long way into making your case.
The
Were they employees? Did you hire them?
Yep, we had them on contract.
And
How did we?
We put out some advertisements on on our student UO zone. There was an article we
Yeah.
wrote in the Gazette, which was sent out by social media, and then we interviewed for them.
how many people applied?
I think it was I had a lot of CVs, 30, 40.
And it was like 1 year.
It was,
Are
yeah,
you doing it again?
2 semesters. We currently have 2 summer interns this summer. I think the role has evolved and now they're more integrated in our monitoring, which is becoming quite task intensive. But I think we will probably be having students going forward in some roles, definitely.
If I can add to that, it was something that actually students loved. Like they wanted to be known as an ambassador. And one of the reasons why we didn't continue it again is because it was done for the guise of engaging students. And as we found out, that current students weren't as interested in them. It was actually future students. So what it made us do was kind of fine tune our recruitment strategy and put more focus on the ambassadors we have for future students and to work more social media duties into their job descriptions. So that was the most valuable thing that we learned from that part. Yes?
Yeah, considering your strategy to reduce the number of Twitter accounts, did you find a lot of pushback? And if you did they keep your accounts and you just kind of make them as, direct them to be more personal? How did you deal with that?
Would you like to?
Sure, yeah. I think when you come to people and you make the case that having a small account actually has a negative effect on the community in terms of diluting audience and segregating people, as well as you establish clear links for potential collaboration. I think a lot of our departments, everybody wants to have an account. And the important thing there is there isn't staff to manage all of this, and the workload would be ridiculous. So by emphasizing the faculty accounts and encouraging individual professors to create their own personal brands where they sell their own research, I think that's been much more effective. But definitely in some cases it was harder. I think one incentive you can use is if you create a common directory where you're pointing a lot of attention to, like we did with our social media page, accounts that are pre-approved are the only ones that'll be highlighted there. And as well, the proprietary branding is given out by our departments. So accounts that want to be considered official and look like it certainly come through us. So I think incentivizing the process and providing alternate routes for earning attention, which often I think that's the need that people have, is we need attention now from a certain number of people. And if you can find other ways to productively and collaboratively get them that, I think that's more effective.
There's another question on the virtual. Well, if you could read out the question.
Okay, sure. I just, what I put up here is this is our social media directory. So again, it's not only with the branding, but also if you've kind of made it here, then we consider you to be an official account. So there, and that you're following best practices and such. So again, it's an incentive. So as Twitter evolves, will it become like email, where messages go unanswered?
Well, we already don't. I mean, we get many tweets that we do not answer. I mean, in some cases, the volume is so high that you have to pick and choose your battles, definitely. And I think some people are not tweeting to receive a response necessarily. They're tweeting to be heard. I think one of the things we found when we were, we've used varying levels of different strategies in terms of how we're going to respond to students. And when we do respond very regularly, the one thing we notice is the reaction that we didn't expect a response. It's often a venting process for many people. So I think, yes, absolutely. Twitter already is like that. I mean, we live in an attention economy, and everywhere you are, people are vying for attention. So wherever it is, people who, there are always going to be people that fall through the cracks and don't receive that. You have to focus your customer service strategy where you can make the best results, I think.
We have what?
Yeah, just one more question. My schedule says the next one starts at 9:45. This one is finished at 9:45. So just give us.
Oh, we have, okay. Well, unless they're short questions. Who is first? I do.
Just want to know if IT using or SWOT.
No, we have other things. Why? Because I don't think we'd want everybody to use Twitter for IT. We have other mechanisms and that are tied to ticket systems, right? So you want to keep them on the ticket system, but we definitely do reply for other things. Maybe just quickly, can we go till people kick us out? Wait.
Yes, we do. We sent one the other day. Yes.
So the question was, do we put out things on the social media for service notifications? And we do. We put them on the website, and we put them in social media.
Our largest uOttawa direct account, the one that's sent to students.
Yeah, mostly for the student portal.
And then we will often tweet at every single person who tweets about it being down once it's back up. So that has received a lot of positive response. We sent out 30 copy-paste tweets the last time it went down, and we received many thank yous as a result. Thanks for letting us know it was back up. So, but I think it's better to centralize it through one account instead of making IT your own separate account.
Also, if you have communication perfecting or smoothing the messages, then that's good as well. It's handy. It's a service for IT.